and welcome to View from the C-Suite, C-Suite Close-Ups. In this series, I'm taking a deeper dive into the career paths of women who have smashed through glass ceilings and gone way beyond the shards. We explore their backgrounds, motivations, challenges, mistakes, and triumphs. It's a celebration of women at the top and a roadmap for those who are on their way. Today's guest is Danielle Hawley, the Global Executive Creative Director at Uber. I first came across Danielle when she updated her LinkedIn photo, and she wrote a post about struggling with getting older. I resonated with her honesty and really with her conclusion that with getting older and with age, you start to feel more confident in your own skin, even if that skin shows just how many years you've been hard at work. I was inspired by Danielle, and I really just wanted to know more about her. What I learned is that she's worked her way up the ranks at several famous ad agencies. And about 2.5 years ago, she made a very brave decision to leave the agency world and run global creative at Uber. She's a self-proclaimed type A creative, which has fueled her success, working for amazing brands like Microsoft, P&G, Audi, Coca-Cola, and AT&T, for which she's earned honors in the most prestigious awards shows. She was named Campaign Magazine's Top 40 Over 40 and served as a mentor at Can, See It, Be It. Danielle's committed to empowering women, dedicated to fully accessible advertising for people with disabilities, and passionate about creating a more inclusive world. One of the things that stood out to me about Danielle after we sat down and talked was that she's not only an amazing leader and an amazing coach, but also a player. The title of this episode is The Teammate. Danielle, I so admire your career choices and your commitment to inclusivity and the way that you always show up as your authentic self, which you did very recently in that LinkedIn post when you changed your photo. I'm really interested to know more about your background. Was there something in your upbringing that prepared you and set you up to be this amazing leader that you are today?
I certainly think being an athlete had a lot to do with it. There is not a time in my history that I can't remember being a part of a team, or at least having team as my core value. I think at a very early age, I really liked the idea of being around people with a similar mindset, about being around people with a similar goal, and kind of showing up for them on the days that they weren't necessarily at their best, and knowing that they were going to show up for me on the days that I wasn't necessarily my best. And that, I think, sense of obligation and duty of what it meant to have a place on a team, and how important it was to do my job, and that there were people counting on me and depending on me, I think really had a huge part in my upbringing. I mean, more so as a person than anything else, but certainly has given me, I think, a leg up in understanding what it means to be a leader and what responsibilities leadership can place on you, and how to handle some of those pressures, and how to, understand that along the way, I think I had a lot of practice in knowing that, if I was anything less than myself, my teammates were going to call bullshit on that. So I didn't really have an opportunity to try and pretend to be anything other than what I was. I mean, there's something about, running around when it's 100 degrees and being broken down, and, being at your toughest points mentally, physically, emotionally, with people that you have your back, that provides a really safe space to understand and learn about who you are. So I think I was really lucky that I had that experience so young and so consistently through my childhood and my life.
What was your sport, and how intense of an athlete were you? And did you continue on through college? Break this down for us. Was it casual?
Yeah, and I'm sorry that I didn't do that. Yes, I was a soccer player. For many people that don't know about what soccer was like, when I was coming up, it was, the Women's World Cup team, the moment where Brandi Chastain ripped off her jersey and they won the World Cup, and Mia Hamm and Abby Wambach and all the people that followed. I was a freshman in college when Mia Hamm was a senior. So I actually played in that era of when women's soccer was really starting to come up, and, played year round. So I had multiple teams a year. In college, was going to practice every single day. It was that level of competition.
Okay. So we're talking pretty intense here, which is.
Yeah. I mean, I've had a job since I was 12 years old, for sure.
You've had a job. Okay. I love it. So I've read that 95% of Fortune 500 CEOs were athletes. 9 in 10 women CEOs played sports, over half at the college level. Why do you think there's this correlation between sports and success in the C-suite?
I mean, I'm first of all amazed and in awe of those numbers, and really appreciate them. But it doesn't surprise me that there is that correlation, just because there's a competitive edge. There's a spirit of understanding that there's ups and downs. Again, there's sort of like moral and emotional obligation of people that you really enjoy being around actually depend on you. And how, to go through life when you're potentially not getting along on the field, but you have to get along on the field, or when you're, your parents are getting divorced, or you're failing a subject, or, you broke up with your boyfriend or whatever it was, or girlfriend, as it were, to not bring that on the field, or to use the field as a way, as a safe space and as a sanctuary to get it all out, and to leave it all on the field, and to channel some of those crazy things that you go through in your life. I still do that. I still need movement. I still need exercise. I still need that kinesthetic experience of learning and feeling a connection to other people, sometimes to just work out my own shit. And that's not a surprise either, right? When you're used to doing that, and that's been your outlet for so long, I think leaning on it when you need it most has been a real resource for me.
It sounds like you look back on it very fondly, and that you've carried through a lot of the positive aspects of it into your adult life as well. But I have to pause, because when you say, I've had a job since I was 12, and you talk about competitiveness and the ups and the downs, like that's a lot. That can be a lot. And so were there ever down times, or when you look back, do you think of things that made your childhood more difficult, or is it all very positive?
No, I mean, certainly I think it's, my mom has always talked about how from a very early age, I sort of had 2 speeds, which was like asleep and 100% full throttle. I just don't really know any other speed, and whether my experience shaped that, or whether I sort of came out of the womb like that, I don't know. My mom will say it's the latter. Perhaps it was both, but when you get to that edge, and you miss, you certainly miss things. I missed proms. I missed sleepovers. I made sacrifices, that I think everyday kids. I didn't get to go to Europe on summer vacations because I was at tournaments and those kinds of things. But you also gain a ton. So it's both a good and it can be sort of a double-edged sword. Certainly in college, it's like, I'm not drinking on weeknights. I'm, using all of my spare time to study, and then travel on the weekends and support the team. So I don't know that it's necessarily a downside. It's just a lot of responsibility at a young age, and a lot of responsibility consistently over time when you're going through many new experiences. But I also think that being an overscheduled kid like that, has given me an edge, especially in advertising, where it's a deadline-based industry. It's like, I know what game time means. I know what it means when you have to tap into a different gear to get through a hard time, meaning like many, many hours, or, I know what it means to put it all out there and to lose, or to win, as it were, or, what have you, in terms of the ups and downs of the competitive spirit of advertising. And there have been, I think while that is a superpower, that stamina that I can tap into when necessary, and certainly has helped me, I think, succeed, it's also borders on masochism. And when you all of a sudden are not, a single person playing soccer on a soccer field for fun, and you're certainly responsible for making money, but you're also responsible for holding up your part of your team that is now your family, there can be challenges. I think the biggest one for me was, frankly, getting and being pregnant. During all of this, I was not capable of slowing down or of understanding what slowing down or not slowing down would do to my body. And certainly there's a difference between me leaving my children as babies because I have to go on a shoot or because I have to go on a pitch. But when I was carrying them, I had a physical responsibility to protect them that I don't know that I understood. And that my brain wasn't really ready to take seriously.
Wow. So when you were pregnant, did the physical aspect of carrying a child force you to slow down? Did you have okay pregnancies? What happened here? I'm feeling like something dramatic is coming because your brain is saying go, go, go. And having been pregnant myself, I know you can't go, go, go. And there's something bigger and more important than yourself that you have to take into account.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your pregnancy. I know we did not talk about this at all.
No, it's all good. It's not something I'm that I shy away from talking about at all. It's the latter. In fact, I use it a lot when I talk to my own team when they go through these kinds of physical changes. Look, it's the single most unique difference between men and women in the workplace. Anybody that chooses to become a parent, male or female, accept the responsibility of being a parent. But when you're carrying a child, it's the irreconcilable difference. No doctor will ever say, you caused this. But I went into labor 8 weeks early. I had my son at 32 weeks, my firstborn. I went to Cannes 6.5 months pregnant. I was pitching, and I was writing manifestos on my porch because I was huge. It was just really, I'm a small person. I'm 5'2". So my pregnancies are, was huge. And I kind of was sitting on the porch writing, and I looked at my husband and I was like, I don't know, what's going on, but it sort of feels like my uterus is kind of like making a fist. And, this is my first pregnancy. So I had no idea those are also, contractions. So I'm 32 weeks pregnant going, I don't know what's wrong, but it just feels kind of funny. And I threw on a pair of jeans and picked up my keys and my wallet and kind of walked out the door. And I was in the hospital, on drugs to stop my contractions. And you know me, I'm sitting there with my laptop like, okay, cool. What medicine are you going to give me now? I ended up having my son 8 weeks early and then standing over his incubator, giving performance reviews. And it just sort of didn't click.
When did it click? Because at some point it clicked and you realized this is not sustainable, at least if I get pregnant again. How did your leadership style change, your own personal discipline, and just how much you put on yourself to perform, and that stamina and that edge?
Well, it didn't sink in. My next pregnancy, I did unfortunately have a miscarriage. And then when I was pregnant with my daughter, right around 32 weeks, I think I was up at 2 a.m. doing something. And my husband sort of just came over and shut my computer and was like, we're not going to do this again. And, I think that if there was a moment, that was it. Where, I needed someone who, I needed the person that knows me better than anyone in the entire world to physically break the page and look at me in the eye and say, you're doing it again. And it's taken me, I think my kids are now 8 and 11. It's taken me, I think, till now to really understand, that in many ways it's an addiction for me. It's almost self-soothing. It's like tapping into that adrenaline rush, or that thing that sort of seemingly gives me some sort of an edge or some sort of a feeling of accomplishment or something I know that I can do that a lot of people can't is actually not so great. And I'm certainly not setting a great example for anybody.
I'm sorry to hear about your miscarriage. I want to pause there. I know what that's like, and it's horrible to deal with. That moment where your husband came in and he gently shut that laptop. Have there been reminders of that since? I know your kids are grown now. You haven't had another pregnancy recently, but have there been moments like that where you've had that, whether it was your husband tapping down the laptop or you yourself going, I'm going to take a minute?
Yeah, I think the first way that I started handling it was I thought, oh, well, people need to know. No one talks about this stuff, and I'm going to be the one that talks about it because, it's so taboo, and the men don't understand, and the women, God forbid, the women think that they have to behave the way I did. That was a moment, certainly, and then I think since then, COVID had a really big impact on me. I used to be a 4:45 wake up, hit the gym, run to the office, off to the races kind of person. And I think COVID's made us all sort of a little bit more civilized. Like, why was I doing that? What was I trying to prove? And I also think that back to the childhood sort of, I think, influences is that I never believed that I was ever the smartest in the room, but I could always outwork someone. And recognizing, I think, that I had other things to give, other value to add. I think it was essentially some fuel in my imposter syndrome of, being young, being handed a lot of responsibility in the industry early, potentially, I always talk about how there was a long time where my potential, my experience was vastly deferential to my potential. I was given all this responsibility. I was put in bigger rooms and more and more and more, and I didn't have the experience to handle that. And then there was sort of a day where I realized my experience had caught up with all of that. That I do know what I'm doing, that I actually have seen it all, and that I can see around corners, and that I am actually a formidable creative person. With ideas and influence on other people creating things that I think was the education I needed, or the self journey that I needed to sort of wake me up from the fact that that's not the only way to win.
Does that imposter syndrome ever creep back in, or do you feel like you kind of like?
Oh, of course.
Yeah,
of course. It often happens, I think, with relationships, being in a global role, as it's all about people trusting you. And, when I sense that a region or a capability of people is starting to trust the creative team, I'm like, we got to do more. We got to do more. Like, I'll go to Japan. I'll do this. I'll do that. And I'm hopping on planes and I'm doing these things. And, I just had an experience 2 weeks ago where my husband had COVID, and it was over Thanksgiving, and I was already going to be away during his birthday, which was a couple of weeks after he recovered. And I just said, you know what? I'm not going to go. I really want to. It's right for the business. It's right for the team. It's not right for me. And that's okay.
Wow. That doesn't sound like a decision you would have made 10 years ago.
I definitely would not have. I would have incurred the sacrifice for sure.
Wow. So let's talk about your global role. You're global creative director at Uber. I've followed your career because I've grown up in the ad business as well. And I so admire when it looks like a career is going one way and then there's this little zag, because after your entire career in the ad industry at various amazing advertising agencies, you went client side. You went to Uber. This was about 2.5 years ago. What drove that decision? Had you been thinking about it for a long time? What emotions were you going through as you started interviewing and like coming to terms with, I'm going to get this job? and then like giving your notice and like working through that. Walk us through that.
Well, my journey on the advertising side, I think it sounds sometimes a little bit cliche when I tell the story of it, just because, I don't know, I guess it's just my own lived experience. So it just feels a little bit like, something that you say about the industry, but, I followed the directions. It was like I went to ad school, and then I went to the young green shop that taught me everything. And I'm really grateful for that experience. In many ways, I still feel like I'm still doing that same job, because I was wearing so many hats and doing so many things right away, coming into the industry. But again, creativity has a way of really eating away at you. You come up with ideas, and then you kind of look around the room trying to figure out how that happened. And then my God, how are you going to do it again? Because you have no idea where it came from, and you're supposed to conjure it on a daily basis. And that can talk about fueling an imposter syndrome of just, am I good enough? Am I creative enough? Do I fit with the top ranks of the people in this industry? And then, of course, I go and get a job at a digital agency, which at that time was like, you didn't do that when you came from the traditional side. The digital agencies didn't understand big ideas, and you weren't creative if you went to a shop like that. And you were essentially learning analytics, and you were learning the data, which was the enemy of all of the best creative ideas in the world. And, I didn't believe those things, and in my heart. But then there was this conflict of like, am I supposed to give away my card-carrying membership to some elite club here, or am I actually learning something that I think they're actually missing out on? But I think that was also a little bit of, feeling a little like you're at the advertising kids table, which also fueled me more. Like, no, I'm going to show them. I'm going to show them that we can come up with big ideas, and we can be more interesting. And there's a media agnostic approach to all of this stuff. And I have a different way of thinking about it and a unique point of view. And don't you want to buy that client? And just, really kind of tapping into all of those angles. And it was tiring. It was tiring to pitch and know that you had the winning idea, but not win because you weren't the agency the client was looking for, or some back end procurement issue stopped you from winning, or whatever it may be. And I'd gone through all the things that you would go through: the misogynistic creative directors, the environment that felt a bit toxic, the mergers, the politics, and the layering of men, and the not understanding when I was supposed to shine versus when I was supposed to be listening and learning, and having 2 kids along the way. I think I just, at the end of the day, I had made Zaz, Possible, Wonderman, Thompson, whatever iteration that whole WPP entity was, I had made them my family. My heart and my soul was in the success of that place. And as I started to interview, I realized so many things. One, how much I needed to sort of let go of that past and grow up. But also, just how much I knew and how much I could lend to a different side of the organization, and that I could stop trying to go into conference rooms and convince clients to try to be brave and do new ideas. And I could just go and be a brave client. And I had learned that from the days that I worked at Audi. God bless Scott Keogh, and the integrated marketing team that he ran. That left an indelible impression on me, and I knew that I could do that on the client side.
Wow. So you did talk a little bit about drama and politics, and I wouldn't be a good interviewer if I didn't say, and then you chose Uber, and we've all read some headlines, and Uber has not always been friendly to women that work within the organization. And when you took this job, did you get any backlash or questioning from your colleagues, your friends, your family? And how'd you deal with that?
I did. My lovely recruiter asked me 3 times if I wanted to interview for this role, and I said no 3 times. And she just kept saying, "Listen, I understand, but you really need to meet this team." And in full transparency, I liked the idea of a brand turnaround. I liked the idea that there was a mission-driven culture. I liked the rumors that the people inside the walls of Uber were nothing like you would have expected. But mostly I came to work for Thomas Renice, who I felt an instant connection with and a kinship with, from the first 15 minutes of having a conversation, and was able to hang up and say, I want to work with him. And that spark and that chemistry was something I had learned. When you have a spark and a chemistry with a teammate on the field, you have a spark and a chemistry with an account person or a strategist or a creative team member in pitches. I knew what that felt like. Leaving people that I really did think of as family and a support system and a work environment that was such a comfort zone rather. He felt very comfortable to me. He felt like someone I knew how to inspire. He felt like somebody who would inspire me. It felt like an opportunity to really learn from each other. And he's an Italian guy from Brooklyn, so it just felt really easy to me.
How have you decided what to prioritize first and what to really grab onto? I'm sure there was a bit of a learning curve, a bit of a just sort of figuring out how Uber runs versus an advertising or digital agency runs.
Yeah.
How did you approach those first 30, 60, 90 days?
I mean, the other thing that I think was really important to me is that I never want to be far away from the work. And that's a tricky situation, right? When you're the boss and you're sort of a coach and a player at the same time. And you certainly don't want to, make it feel as if to anybody that you're cherry picking good assignments. And I hope to God my team would agree that, when I'm on the team, I'm playing. And that means that you are my peer and I'm lending experiences and might be the decision maker, but it is definitely a democracy and it is a give and take. But I wanted to get to know the organization through the work. So I also knew that the team and me personally needed some quick wins. And so that was really my priority for the first 3 to 6 months, was just like make a splash, make this giant organization go, what's happening in marketing, what's happening in that creative team. There's nothing I think that changes culture more than doing really good work and doing it very publicly, because it's inspiring and it's fun to be around. And when people notice, that's the catalyst that allows you the momentum to do more and more of it. And if Uber is nothing if not prolific, it's my favorite thing about being here is that there's always something really meaty and juicy to dive into. There's delivery and there's mobility and there's earner and there's B2B and there's freight. And then you multiply that by 4 regions. It's like, any week of the year, you can jump on a plane and go to a shoot. And I think that's really exciting and really fun. And to be able to watch all of that work go from good and pretty mediocre to really good and great has been so rewarding. And it's absolutely a testament to the kind of people that we've been able to hire and the team that I've been able to build and the partners that we've been able to find in the agencies.
And your stamina.
And my stamina. Yeah, I mean, it will always be who I am. I am much more aware of when I'm bordering on that edge of masochism. And I also have not just my husband now, but more people that tap me on the shoulder when it gets there. But it does help.
Let's talk more about your leadership style and being a woman in tech. I found this great quote from you. You said, coming up in this business, I wished for nothing more than to see women in leadership who didn't try to lead like the men.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
We didn't have a lot, women of my generation in this business on the creative side, did not have a lot of women to watch. And so the people that we watched were men, some of them brilliant, empathetic, incredible mentors, most of them not. And there was and is, unfortunately, I think, a style of leadership that rejects vulnerability, that isn't responsive, that plays a little bit of a cat and mouse game of, well, I'm the CCO, so you have to come find me if you want your work noticed, seen, appreciated. There's a, one of the most valuable things that I learned from probably the most challenging boss and leader that I'd ever had was sometimes those are the best things that you learn. Sometimes those are the things that you never forget and that really fuel your own leadership style. But as a creative director, you have to be very, very hard on the work. You just do. If you're going to be successful and you're going to apply both the objectivity of what makes a great idea and the subjectivity that makes you as a creative director to the work. But you don't have to be hard on the people, and you don't have to, you do have a responsibility to understand that it's very personal for creative people. And there's a deft touch and an empathy and an observant leadership style that I believe I have an obligation to understand in each individual that is on the team, to make sure that when I am hard on the work, that I haven't demotivated the person. And I don't think that that the men that I saw, from the vast majority of the men that I saw, didn't always lead that way, didn't have that philosophy, believed fear was a motivator, believed, overworking was a motivator, was I'm going to go and have dinner and do whatever else. And then we're going to meet at 2 a.m. and put work on the wall. Like I really wanted to be a pioneer of a different way of doing it.
And has this been well received at Uber?
Yeah, well, yes. I mean, I think that Uber, of all places, because of the history, has no tolerance for a lack of empathy or bad behavior or any kind of conduct that looks like belittling or demeaning or disrespectful. So it's not only embraced, it's encouraged. So I think it's been a very good marriage of my own philosophy with the environment here.
Earlier in your career, did you have to deal with power struggles or disagreement with your style? And how did you deal with that versus where you are now, which feels like this very confident and content? It seems like a very good place to be.
Yeah. I've been around. Some of it is just, being 45 and being like, giving a lot less fucks about what other people think, not just in my career, but in life. And knowing that that was another thing that COVID taught me was just, my children and my husband and my dog are my entire world. And if everything is right with them, which of course it never is, right? There's always craziness in a family household, but that I can do anything if it's just the 5 of us, and everything else is gravy. It really truly is. So I think I have a very solid foundation, and I'm really lucky in that regard. But sure, I mean, I think that other people in the industry didn't understand sort of my data-inspired creativity. They didn't necessarily, the experience that I had that completely changed my life, not just my work life, was working on Tommy Hilfiger and designing a line of adaptive clothes for people living with disabilities. And this is a perfect example of sort of the cognitive dissonance that I think exists in the industry. Is that we had written a script. A wonderful woman on my team, Nicole McDonough, who has just like the most beautiful skill at just writing the thing that makes everyone cry, just like gut punching and just getting to the heart of the emotional underbelly of the beast. And we were all sitting around a conference room table, revering this beautiful script and talking about the lines that we were going to win and all the things that that come from sort of that box of conference room that you're in, and frankly, your exclusive world of being a marketer who isn't understanding your audience or the outside world. And when we showed the community that we were working with on a daily basis, all of whom were women, were people who were living with disabilities or caretakers or caregivers of people living with disabilities, they looked at us like we were crazy. And they just said, "Why is this sad? My life isn't sad. I'm not sad. You're not selling me something that makes me sad. In fact, you're offering me a chance to wear fashion. That's inspiring to me. That's exciting to me. I have, a whole closet full of Velcro sweatpants and things that I've had to make myself because I have a style and an inner personality that I want to shine. And you're offering me this opportunity to wear clothing that makes me feel like I can represent my spirit, my personality, and I can put it on myself because you're making buttons that button and zippers that zipper and pants that allow for my limb difference. Can you just make fashion advertising for me?" And it, it just sort of blew our minds. It really blew our minds about the fact that we were making ads for other people in advertising. And I don't want to ever do that again.
What a powerful way to realize that. Wow. Are you loving the new Apple spot right now? That is so celebratory.
It is beautiful and so well done. And the product integration is perfect. And the fact that they did closed caption audio and they did descriptive audio, and that every channel it is in is a way for people with disabilities to consume the piece of media, was really, really well done. I'm very proud of them and excited about it.
It's amazing to watch. For anybody who's watching this now, go check it out. So I don't even know how to wrap this all in a bow because there have been so many fascinating tangents, but I do want to pause a minute and ask you how you do it all, because you've got this successful career. You seem very grounded, at least now. You've taken us a bit on the journey in terms of what it's taken to get here. You're giving back to the industry. You're being really intentional about the way you're coming into a tech company. Like, what life hacks do you have? You're a mom. Like, how do you get by? Give us some tips.
Well, I mean, I think the first thing to make sure everyone understands is I don't do it all. I'm definitely let my friends down. I don't send birthday cards on time. I am very much lacking in a lot of areas of my life. I still make significant sacrifices, and I do not want to be part of the facade that is everything is perfect and I have it all figured out. My marriage is perfect and my children are perfect and my job is fantastic. It isn't that way at all. But in terms of tactics and things that I've used to help me with a really busy life, I always say that if I don't do it right now, I'm going to forget. And so I'm incredibly responsive. I mean, to a fault. I keep the zero inbox. I answer text messages right away. If not right away, then usually within 24 hours. When there are moments where I'm missing that stuff, I have definitely stepped over the line of stamina into masochism, for sure. I try to be present, we employ things like no phones at the dinner table. I try and spend at least 15 minutes with each of my kids at night, reading or just listening to them, without any distractions, and frankly, alone, not with my husband, just one-on-one time with my kids. I certainly never skip my one-on-ones with my team. I think, or my leadership meetings. That is the easiest thing to do when you're a coach and a player, is to just be like, I don't know what the agenda is. We're not going to have the meeting. And I can guarantee that every time you don't have an agenda, that's probably the best discussion that you're going to have every time. So I just keep myself to things, and I've learned things along the way to just not do, even when things become overwhelming and are really hard to manage.
And what are your like own personal indulgences? Like, how do you take care of you?
Oh, I do all the things. All the things. I try to do all the things. No, I mean, it's exercise. Given all the givens, if I, have an hour to get my hair cut, do my nails, or do something else, I'm going to choose to go to SoulCycle, or I'm going to choose to go for a walk with the dog, or I'm going to choose to hike. And I'm so lucky that I now live in a place where I can walk out the door and be in the Briones Regional Park and in the East Bay, which has been such an amazing thing to access. But I'm going to choose exercise every time. Movement. I think it's very fitting that I am at a movement company, because I really believe in the ability to move freely and without barriers, and to go wherever you want to go. And I think there is a business responsibility to Uber, that there are things like, we're going to get you your meal, we're going to get you your ride. But there are also a lot of more emotional and metaphoric ways that a movement company needs to behave, has an obligation to behave, that we're doing more and more of, which is really exciting.
And how do you measure your own personal success?
I just kind of check in from time to time. I will be honest in that every time I read the question, how do you do it all? From interviews and panels, I always say, I'm not going to be the one that says, this is how you do it, because I just, you have to check in with yourself and say, I don't do it all. I don't. And I certainly don't want, I tell my team this all the time. The last thing that I need on the team are mini versions of myself. That's not how we get to better ideas. That's not how we get to unique points of view. I don't expect anybody to work like I work. I don't expect anyone to have the same process I have. And I think when I see ideas that are things that are amazing, but also that I would have never come up with, I know that institution is working. When my kids say thank you and please, I feel like that's a measure of success. When my daughter comes home and is like, oh, I just wrote this thing, and I look at it and I'm just like, okay, through osmosis, she's learning creativity from me and my husband. I love that. I love that my kids don't feel like they have to be little soldiers in the institution that is school, and that they come home with their own ideas. Those to me are the things that I really am glad are a part of my life and feel really grateful for, and therefore think of as successes.
Beautiful. What advice do you have to the next generation of women leaders who are watching this and watching you and going, oh my gosh, I want to be there one day? Maybe not her, because everyone wants to be their own authentic leader, but I want to be there. I want to be in the C-suite.
This is another one that I really struggle with, because I think we have so much to learn from a generation that's like, I don't ever want to do what Danielle did. Like, I would never give up that much of my life to my career. And I think that's amazing. And I can't wait for a time where I can confidently say, it doesn't take this much work, or it doesn't take that many hours. But right now, I'll be honest and say, I'm not sure that I can say that confidently. I think that there's a big misunderstanding that the higher that you get in an organization or in an agency, the less work you do. And the very opposite is true. It's different work, but it is just as tiring. It is just as mentally exhausting. It is just as physically exhausting, if not more, because you're traveling and you're visiting, global regions all over the world. But I just think that if there's one thing that I wish that I had known sooner was just honestly to just do it my own way. Not to channel Frank Sinatra, but honestly, I just always questioned whether my way of doing it was right, whether the things that were interesting to me were interesting to other people. And if they weren't, did that make it wrong or, avant-garde in a creative industry that sort of had a path. And I'm very grateful for the data scientists and, the Jason Carmels, who I would love to call out on this interview, who taught me things, and the Cat Grinders of the world and the account team that made me sort of a hybrid creative, a business person and a chief creative officer at the same time. And that right brain, left brain thing was me. And it was something that I had a value to add. And I kind of pushed it away for way too much of my career because I just wasn't confident being myself yet.
That's amazing advice to give. I have one final question, and it's so hard. I'm preparing you. It's so difficult. But what is the legacy that you want to leave behind?
Ooh. That you can be equal parts tough and empathetic. I think that is the only way to really keep people feeling creative for their whole careers. And that, the self-love that comes from just knowing that spirit is in you, and that on the days that you don't have it, you have a team that will support you. It's not shocking that I just think that I want people to find team in their life, and not in the literal interpretation of the world, whatever that means, whether it be their family, their friends, their communities, their work life. Because I think that, I always say winning is fun, but winning together is, amazing.
Wow, Danielle, that is a wrap on your C-suite close-up, and I am so grateful for your time.
Thank you for having me. I always happy to do it, and I'm so grateful for people like you who are telling stories and who give up so much of their time to do that. It's certainly something that we all need, and I appreciate very much.
Thank you. Thank you. When we came into this, I knew we'd be talking a lot about leadership and what an amazing leader you are. But as I'm walking away from this, I'm thinking not only coach, but teammate.
Yep.
You're an amazing teammate and part of the team, as you have been since you were young. And I think that's such a gift, an absolute gift for everyone who gets to work with you. So thank you for that. Thank you to our audience who joined in, and I look forward to seeing you again next month when the conversation continues. Bye-bye.
To find out more about Wong Doodie's work transforming businesses through human experience, go to wongdoodie.com. If you're a woman in the C-suite and would like to be a guest on this show, please reach out to me at womenleaders@wongdoodie.com.